Breaking news. Trump says Israel and Iran have agreed to ceasefire. Live updates. President Donald Trump announced Monday that Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire, which he said will end the 12-day exchange of attacks between the countries in a conflict that prompted concerns of significant destabilization of the Middle East. 6:02 p.m. EDT. In a post on Truth Social, Trump announced that Israel and Iran agreed to a complete and total ceasefire in the next 24 hours, after days of exchanging air and missile strikes. The president offered no further details about what either side agreed to, but insisted both sides would remain peaceful and respectful. 4 p.m. EDT. Trump said hardly any damage was done, while 13 of the missiles Iran fired were knocked down and one was set free, he wrote, making multiple inferences that there would be no escalation of the military conflict between Tehran and Washington, while also thanking Iran for giving us early notice of the counterstrikes. Trump said Iran has gotten it all out of their system, and there will hopefully be no further hate, writing, "Congratulations world, it's time for peace," in the series of posts. 2 p.m. officials at the Department of Defense confirmed to multiple outlets that Al-Udeid Air Force Base was targeted by short and medium-range ballistic missiles, but no casualties have been reported from the attack. 1:30 p.m. EDT. Bahrain, a neighboring monarchy in the Persian Gulf and the host of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, closed its airspace Monday. The Bahraini Interior Ministry warned citizens to stay off main roads after air raid sirens sounded, according to statements from the government on X. 1:10 p.m. EDT. In televised remarks, the Iranian government took credit for the attack, which it called a mighty and successful response to the American strikes. Iran's Supreme National Security Council said the missile strike posed no danger to our friendly and brotherly nation of Qatar and its honorable people, and the New York Times reported Iranian officials gave their Qatari counterparts advance notice. The Iranian government gave the warning in order to minimize casualties, the Times reported, citing anonymous Iranian officials. 12:48 p.m. EDT. The missiles were fired toward Al-Udeid Air Force Base near Doha, one of the largest U.S. Air Force bases in the Middle East. Majid al-Ansari, a spokesperson for the Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs, condemned the attack and said the nation's air defenses successfully thwarted the attack and intercepted the Iranian missiles. The Ain al-Assad Air Force Base in Iraq was also targeted, the Associated Press reported, citing an Iraqi official, but the U.S. military has not confirmed this. However, missiles never arrived at base and the U.S. confirmed the base was never hit, the wire service later updated. Witnesses on social media posted videos of what appeared to be missiles streaking across the skies over Qatar. Axios first reported Iran fired 6 missiles toward the Gulf nation, citing an anonymous Israeli official. 11:30 a.m. EDT. The Qatari Foreign Ministry said in a statement that airspace in Qatar would be temporarily closed to ensure the safety of residents and visitors, according to a translation by Reuters. The U.S. Embassy in Qatar issued an advisory earlier on Monday recommending American citizens to shelter in place until further notice, out of an abundance of caution, as Qatar is home to the Al-Udeid Air Bases, the largest U.S. base in the Middle East. 9:20 a.m. U.S. cities were on edge Monday morning, with Miami briefly shutting down its Metrorail after a suspicious package was found at Stephen P. Clark Government Center in Miami, requiring the building and the surrounding area to be evacuated, the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office told Forbes, while the Miami Herald reported a bomb squad was called. Miami-Dade Transit said service for the county's Metrorail and Metromover was temporarily suspended because of unforeseen police activity, though service resumed around 11:20 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. 7:30 a.m. EDT. The Israeli military said it struck the routes leading up to Iran's underground Fordow nuclear facility, which was targeted by U.S. bunker busters, in order to obstruct access to the site. Earlier on Monday, Israel's defense ministry said it was carrying out strikes on several key targets in Tehran, including Evin Prison, the notorious detention site where Iran holds prominent political dissidents, including Nobel Peace Prize winner Narges Mohammadi. 6:30 a.m. EDT. Russian president condemned the U.S. military's strike on Iran's nuclear facilities, calling it an absolutely unprovoked act of aggression against Iran. It has no basis or justification. after meeting with Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Moscow. The latest remarks from Putin is a shift from the more muted initial response to the strikes on its ally by Moscow, as it remains entangled in its own conflict in Ukraine. For our part, we are making efforts to assist the Iranian people, the Russian president added, although it is unclear what kind of support would Moscow be willing to provide Iran. 5 a.m. EDT at an emergency meeting of the International Atomic Energy Agency's Board of Governors, the UN agency's chief Rafael Grossi said the U.S. strikes likely caused very significant damage to Iran's underground Fordow nuclear site. Given the explosive payload utilized and the extreme vibration-sensitive nature of centrifuges, very significant damage is expected to have occurred, Grossi said. Grossi said Iran told the IAEA that there was no increase off-site radiation levels at any of the 3 plants struck by U.S. forces. 4 a.m. EDT Beijing has been as one of the more vocal critics of the U.S. strikes on Iran, with its foreign ministry saying the move seriously violates the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law and escalates tensions in the Middle East. China's ambassador to the UN, Fu Song, told state media that Iran is harmed, but also harmed is U.S. credibility as a country and as a party to any international negotiations. Fu added, China is deeply concerned about the risk of the situation getting out of control. The parties to the conflict, Israel in particular, should immediately cease fire to prevent a spiraling escalation and to resolutely avoid the spillover of the war. 3 a.m. EDT Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Moscow on Monday to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and told reporters that his country has shared concerns, worries, and adversaries with Russia. Speaking about the strikes, Araghchi said, the U.S. and Israeli actions have serious consequences and create problems not only for Iran, but also for the region, for the international community, and for international law. June 23, 2 a.m. EDT Iranian military officials warned that the U.S. strikes will be met with a decisive response, as the country's army chief, Major General Amir Hatami, accused America of committing crimes against the Iranian state. According to Iranian state media, Hatami said, every time they committed crimes, they received a decisive response, and this time too, it will be the same. In a separate televised statement, an Iranian military spokesperson addressed the U.S. president directly and said, Gambler Trump, you can start this war, but we will be the ones who end it. June 22, 11 p.m. EDT The U.S. Navy-led Joint Maritime Information Center issued an advisory on Sunday, warning that the U.S. strikes on Iran were a significant regional development, escalating concerns for the maritime industry operating in the Arabian Gulf and adjacent waters. The center said, the maritime threat level remains elevated, and recent events create ongoing uncertainty in the maritime domain. However, U.S.-associated vessels have successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz without interruption, which is a positive sign for the immediate future. 10:30 p.m. EDT According to NBC News, Iran sent a message to Trump through an intermediary during last week's G7 summit, warning that it would activate sleeper cells to carry out terror attacks inside the U.S. 10 p.m. EDT In a post on his Truth Social platform, Trump claimed Iran's nuclear sites sustained monumental damage from the U.S. strikes, citing satellite images. The president added, obliteration is an accurate term. The biggest damage took place far below ground level. Bullseye. 9:30 p.m. EDT Earlier on Sunday, the president raised the prospect of regime change in Iran, despite other officials in his administration insisting that the U.S. was not seeking such a thing. In a post, Trump wrote, it's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MEGA. A short while later, Trump wrote that the B-2 bomber pilots who struck Iran have just landed safely in Missouri. 12 p.m. EDT Iran launched about 40 missiles at targets in Israel, the Associated Press confirmed, injuring 23 people, while the Israeli Air Force struck targets in 4 cities across Iran, the Israel Defense Forces confirmed in a statement on X. Dropping munitions on targets including command centers and missile launchers. That Israel's strikes killed at least 7 members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and 2 conscripts, the New York Times reported, citing Iranian state-affiliated media. 10 a.m. EDT Vice President J.D. Vance told Meet the Press the U.S. was not at war with Iran, we're at war with Iran's nuclear program, adding the U.S. has no interest in boots on the ground. I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East, Vance said, adding, I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president.